and all the various sessions that have been offered. And I'm a partner with ConvergenceCoaching. We are a leadership and management consulting firm for accounting firms across the United States of various sizes. And we help leaders achieve success, get clear about their vision and direction, and manage all of the change that is coming at us at a faster pace and higher volume than ever. So today's topic is going to be, how do we drive change through effective communication? And with that, we want to manage it maybe more effectively, create more calm. And I know when there's this volume of change and all of these things that we're supposed to be doing, and figuring out how to prioritize and resource and schedule and test things, it can become overwhelming. Yet, if we are not embracing the change, if we are not leading with change, we will be left behind. But more importantly, we won't be as effective or successful or collaborative as we could potentially be. Our clients will be impacted. Our team members are impacted. And so we're on this get better journey, all of us. We are in our firms, we can get better. Our workflows and processes can get better. How we communicate and how we manage and drive, this change that's affecting us, our clients, our communities. And so change is good. It can be a lot. And so we're going to talk about and break down the basics of change, the psychology and mechanics, if you will, of change, kind of a level set to start. And then we'll talk about some specific strategies that you can apply to bring your team members and clients along the change adoption curve, even those resistors, even those naysayers, even though that doesn't apply to me. So we'll talk about some strategies, and the key to that is communication. And so we'll talk about the role of strategic communication in developing our change plans and creating a change communication plan along with that. And doing so will bring people faster, more people along that tipping point of change. And that's what our goal is in change management, is to bring people along to adopt that change faster. And we want to make it as smooth as possible, as effective as possible when we can. And so we're going to dive right in here and understand kind of the psychology and mechanics of change. So I have a poll for you that will get open. When facing organizational change, which challenge do you find most difficult? Is it helping others understand why the change is needed? Maybe managing your own resistance or uncertainty to change? Or maybe some of you are like, we have enough change. Can we just stop changing for a while? So you have maybe a little bit of resistance. Or is it communicating clearly across all groups, figuring out what our communication strategy should be, or keeping the momentum going once we start? And it's like, why did we do this? Why are we on this journey here? And so we need to keep that momentum going so people don't get tired, fatigued, or getting key buy-in from key influencers. And there might be something else. I'd love to know what it is. You can put it in the Q&A. So chat that and, enter that into the Q&A. Make sure that you complete this. And then we will keep moving. So I want to just understand, where are you when facing organizational change? What challenge do you find most difficult? And so there's many, and there might be something else that's not listed here. And when we are creating change plans, it is important to acknowledge and identify, hey, people are coming at change from different perspectives, from different mindsets. They have different things that they value or prefer as we are moving towards different change initiatives, whether it's a new technology platform, or maybe it's a new workflow or a process, or maybe we're creating new roles in our practices that we have not developed before. And so that changes how we operate and how we communicate with clients. And so it's important to say, we're all coming at this from different perspectives. And that's one of the reasons we have resistance to change. And so if we can break it down, what could we do to help minimize that resistance? The few places that I've identified here for you to look is the reason for the change unclear? Do they understand why we're changing, or what's going to be better because we changed? So if we've been communicating that, we're just saying how we're going to change. We jump right into the how, We're good doers. We jump into the how. Or maybe we haven't gotten input and considerations, and yes, even objections, and all the reasons why we shouldn't do it, because that can help us address those concerns and overcome them, which will bring people along that tipping point faster. There's an impact to relationships. And so it might change who I work with or how I work with people. And that can be, sad or disconcerting for people. Maybe our communication has not been sufficient. We said that in the meeting, we announced it in the meeting. Why is everybody not on board? Well, first of all, they probably weren't all in the meeting. And then second, that's not our normal way of hearing things. Some of us prefer it in writing, or we need to digest it or whatever. And so we need to make sure we are really clear about communication and communicate multiple times. Maybe the benefits or rewards, the why isn't compelling. Maybe it's not speaking personally to them and how their life, their clients, their process will be better or smoother. It could be hard or overwhelming. It could be a lot. And we might need to acknowledge that and prioritize that and figure out where it fits. It could threaten jobs or aspects of our job. And maybe aspects of our job that we like or value, or that we feel good and confident at. Now you're asking me to do something new that I don't feel so confident at. And so we also could be the leaders of the change. So we don't really have evidence that this is going to work, and it's going to take a leap of faith and trust. So there's lots of reasons that we could potentially resist change. You probably could add some more to the list. And I think it's important, if we backed up and consider those things, we can proactively address them so that we can drive change faster and more effectively. And so this is something that we might normally want to step over or maybe push our way through, instead of getting really clear and just acknowledging, hey, people are going to have objections. People are going to resist for various reasons. And our job as leaders is to bring them along and say, how do we best facilitate that? What does that look like? And how do we address their concerns upfront and as proactively as possible? And so we do want to get that input. We do want to ask questions. Otherwise, they're going to dig in. And our goal in our organizations is to all be rowing in the same direction. So you think about those rowing teams, and they're like the muscles and the flow and the glide that they're creating, because they all know their role. They all know where we're headed. But as soon as somebody sticks that oar and hits dirt in the bottom of the river, we screech to a halt. And so we want to minimize that as much as possible. So our job is to bring people along so we don't have people resisting, sticking their oar, down to the bottom of the lake or the river and stopping us in our tracks, literally, maybe even capsizing us. And to compete and sustain, we have to get faster at driving change. And there is a lot of volume. It's coming at us so fast, and ideas. And like this conference, you are going to go back with all these ideas of change, and your partners are going to be, hey, settle down. We've got enough going on, or your team or your clients. It's like, we've changed enough, of our systems or our processes. We can't, do any more. But we have to try a whole bunch of things. We also could have arguments of, it's been working fine. This is how I did it. We've got to let go of that also. And we have a next generation of leaders in our organizations, a next generation of leaders, and with all the transition in our clients, and they have expectations that we're going to change, work smarter, leverage technology, use AI, be more efficient, be creative about our roles. And so if we're not making those changes, the next firm is, and they will compete and outcompete you. And so we need to say, how can we get there faster? How can we drive change faster? And once we have that adoption, we can choose the next one. We can pick the next one for what it might be. So let's talk about change mechanics and the old way and the new way. And we'll talk about some strategies to help overcome that resistance I was talking about, or that questions that we're talking about. And, we could also come from hopeful interpretations that they're not trying to be negative, most of them, or not trying to be negative or derail you or what you're trying to change for the better. They legitimately have questions and concerns. And so if we can come from, hey, they care about this being successful, then I can figure out, how do I address them? And so we're dealing with this diverse set of individuals, as Jack Wells says here, with a variety of different personalities, communication preferences, work approaches. And because of their influence over their peers, it can make or break our change efforts. So we have to figure out, how do we address those? And we can address them globally, and then we can address them individually. And as we look at that, it's important to understand Jeffrey Moore's change curve. Many of you have probably been exposed to this before, at maybe different conferences, or you've read about it, or there's been courses on it. But we like to this visual to say, how do we take the innovators and early adopters who are really driving the change, ready to, like, let's just go try it, and then bring those early majority and late majority and laggards along on that change curve so that we can adopt the change while accommodating to those different preferences. And if you look at this change curve, the innovators, they wake up ideas, like they just can't help it. Their ideas just coming out of their mouth, maybe every other sentence. But they're like, hey, we should try this. Hey, what about this? Hey, I have another idea here. Did we think of this? We should try this. So just innovating constantly. And early adopters are their buddies. If they're linking arms with them, that's who they're running with first. And so early adopters can just get right on board with that. And that's where we want to start and drive change. One of the things that we worry about, or an old paradigm of change, is everybody has to get on board. And we even use that in our communication language. And we would just say, start with those that will come along with us. And let's do proof of concept. Let's get the kinks worked out. Let's, work out and make tweaks to, our process, because then people can start seeing success. And then the early majority comes along. And then the late majority and the laggards will come along. The late majority and laggards are more on the side of, hey, I really don't want to, have much change. I like my rhythm. I like my habits. I like my processes. And you can change when I'm gone. And so we need their input, because we need to understand what their objections and questions are. They will experience being heard, but they could also save some of the innovators and early adopters from some of the mistakes we might make, or maybe some of the things that might happen that could set us back. So we really don't want to ignore them. I do want to include them in the process. I do want to get input from them. But who I'm going to focus on adopting the change first is over on the left, on that blue. And then we will start to bring those others along as they see success. And as we, show a new process or a new way of doing things, or a new use of a technology or AI that we might have, or a new role that we've developed, a new initiative, new way of measuring, metrics, whatever it might be that you are, implementing in your firm. So we want to make sure that we are identifying that and adopting the mindset of, hey, let's bring those people along that are really going to run with us. They're going to roll up their sleeves and help make it happen. And then that big, scary chasm in the middle, we will reach out beyond that, and they will start coming along. They'll trust us to cross that chasm with us, because they've seen success. We've piloted it with them. They got to input. And so that's what our job is, in managing the change curve. It will also help us, pull down all of the information, all the questions. That's part of what causes chaos and change, all the uncertainty. And I'm going to talk about how we can get some clarity in that, and move away from uncertainty to clarity through our communication process. Okay, but first, I think it's helpful to understand, hey, here's the characters, that represent your team and your clients. By the way, they fall somewhere on this curve as well, the change curve. And so it's important to understand where they might be and how we're managing them and the changes we're asking them to make. So I am going to pop up another poll and ask you to complete this. I'll speak to this while you're completing it. Where do you see you fit on the adoption curve? And pick the one that best applies. Don't worry about it being perfect. I did not put another or an I don't know. I want you to really try to self-identify. So it's going to force you to pick one. But am I way over there on the left, innovator? I'm coming up with all the ideas. My team says, all right, enough, settle down. Am I the early adopter? I'm ready to go. I probably have some ideas, but I'm just all over it. Yes, let's try this. Or am I that early majority, like, show it to me and I'm willing to jump that chasm. I'm willing to go there, but I need a little bit more proof. I need a little bit more evidence for you to bring me along, maybe a little bit more conversation. Or am I more on the late majority laggers that I need to figure out how do we, get them to see the benefits of the change and then bring them along, more towards the end of that change adoption. Still speeding it up. We want to get over that tipping point faster because of the speed and the volume of change. We have to do that, but I might be over there on the right-hand side. So where do you fit on the adoption curve? It's good to self-identify, and then you can start to identify or speculate, maybe your partners, maybe your team members, maybe our different operations team members, where are they on the adoption curve? Because that'll help us figure out how do we bring them along in our communication approaches that are going to be required to do so. So when we talk about our change communication, we like Roger's adoption model. And his premise in the diffusion of innovation is that we need to consider these different elements when we're communicating change to positively affect the adoption of change. So we are going to pilot a new AI tool that is going to do tax research for us, or we are going to pilot a new workflow product or a collaboration tool. And so I need to step back and communicate why we are considering this. And that's the relative advantage. And I need to identify what's going to be better than what we're currently doing. Why will it be better? How will it be better? And what will happen if we don't do it? So I can compare the risks or the impacts of us not moving towards it. What happens if we stay where we are? So I want to compare it, this relative advantage, to what we're currently doing. What will be better in the new world? And what will happen if we stay in the old world? And so distinguishing that and communicating that. And that ties to the comparability, how close to the new model, so this new workflow, or the new AI tool for research, how close is this to what we're doing already or comfortable with? And what am I going to have to change? What habits am I going to have to change? What am I going to have to do differently? Be real about what we're asking. So maybe I'm going to use a new tax research tool, and I'm going to start with, creating the prompts and asking the research. I still need to review it, but the time it takes is going to be one of the relative advantages to generate the output. And then I can spend the time, analyzing and reviewing it. How does it apply to my particular scenario or client or whatever it might be? So I can walk through the process of what is going to be different and then what's going to be better. The time savings is going to be better. Options that maybe I wouldn't have considered, or, if we have, staff or a manager researching it, we might miss some things. It's more comprehensive, perhaps. So I can start to identify what the advantage and compare it to our current process. And then how complex is it? I think this is one of the places that we are not as truthful. We want to minimize it. And I come from a technology background, and accounting software, ERP background. And I think that's one of the things we would minimize, is how difficult the change is going to be. And it's, technology, solutions and changing platforms is just as much about process, if not more, and workflows than it is the actual technology and how we're going to use it. So again, how difficult is it going to be to use or to understand or to navigate? And some of us, and I'm, one of them, it's like, I'm not getting the newest phone. that is coming out, because I've got my system set up. I have it. But if I can understand what the benefit is of a new phone, and you're going to show me the difference because my thumbs and my brain knows, how to work it, tell me how hard this is going to be. What am I going to have to do to get comfortable with it, to set it up? And we want to be straight about that. It builds trust, and it has people feel supported. And then those that are coming along with you will speak more positively about it to those that are more on the late majority side. Otherwise, it's like, oh, it was way, took way more time, or it was way different than what they said it is. We got to prevent that as much as possible. And one of the ways that we do that is being really straight about the complexity. And you can see these are all interrelated, because then that ties to the comparability. So here's what's going to be the same. The client experience, the client output is going to be the same, but what's different is the entry side. And so this is where we're going to have changes, and different people are going to be doing different things. And, I can compare that. And then trialability, this mistake that we make of everybody has to come along. Well, where could we try it? Where could we pilot it? I would like to leave that word with you. You start using that word like crazy. How could we pilot? What group of people? What group of clients? What scenarios could we, pilot it under? Maybe a specific practice area we could, try it underneath. And so we don't have to do the entire thing. Now, we have to be careful, as we're talking about the speed of change, that we don't get stuck in pilot mode all the time and we're not really rolling it out. We need to have, clear timeline and cascade of how we're going to roll it out to other groups, or, across the firm, or whatever it might be. And so, but that piloting or testing, I think, is important. And also part of that pilot and testing can be talking to other firms that have done a similar implementation or managed a similar change process that you are undergoing right now. And so that can get some comparability. I can see what their, lessons learned were, what the benefits were, what the outcomes, that relative advantage that you're speaking about. Did they experience it? What does that look like? So that's another way we can get this trialability and some of that comparability as well. And then observability. What results are we going to see? And so I might see, decrease in time, X hours in our, tax research, software. Or I might have more leverage in our new workflow and new process, and lower cost team members. We're able to leverage maybe non-CPAs. We're able to leverage, other team members that will create capacity, maybe for managers and partners to be doing more client relationship management, more proactive outreach, more business development, mentoring, training. And so what am I going to observe specifically? What results are we going to see because of that change? So if we consider all of those elements in our communication, you can see this takes a little bit of time, but it will create more buy-in up front and bring people along, so that they can see, hey, here's what's really going to happen, and here's what what we can expect, the change to be causing. And so if we do more thinking and planning about our communication, about the change we're asking people to undertake, the more buy-in we're going to get. And otherwise, you're going to handle the communication on the back end, but it's going to be, hey, what about this? You didn't consider this. I didn't expect this. And so we're going to spend time one place or the other. We encourage you to spend more time up front, communicating up front. People will have respect and can see that you are taking the time to really consider the impacts of the change, and that you care about it and the impact. So thinking about that, documenting it. And in the resources, over in the resources tab, I do have a change communication form for you to use that will ask these questions and help you think through it and plan your communications. And then part of that is identifying what the objections are. Again, don't shy away from those. I need to know what they are so I can overcome them, but also it could keep us out of trouble. It might prevent us from getting smacked from something that we did not anticipate, so that we can identify that. And from those objections, I can start to create an FAQ. And that's another thing that I have in there is several FAQ, frequently asked questions documents that you can leverage on different topics, whether it's, succession planning of a retiring partner, or, it's promotions and how do we manage promotions of managers, and maybe not everybody, got selected. It could be M&A. There's Q&A on M&A if we're going to merge with another firm. You can use it for like these technology, changes that we have. And so if I can anticipate the objections, then I can start capturing frequently asked questions and create consistent answers for it. Somebody can own the FAQs. It doesn't mean they're coming up with all the FAQs. They're going to be the facilitator of it and making sure it gets captured, and then we agree on what the answers are. Then I can start to identify what those messages are going to be that we need to communicate to our different various stakeholders. And I might have an FAQ for the leadership team, and then I have an FAQ, maybe a smaller version for the entire staff. And so there just might be some things that are more leadership or, owner based. And then I can have FAQs, for the staff. So like on succession planning, we have a retiring partner. There might be some ownership implications that would be in the FAQs that we're not going to share with the staff, for example. But I would share, potential questions that clients might have. Because one of the things that the FAQs and planning these communications can provide is consistent messaging instead of us all making it up. And then we have inconsistent messaging. And that starts at the top with the leadership team having similar answers. So I don't go to Jack and get one answer and go to Sarah and get a different answer and go to Amanda and get a different one. Here's the messaging and positioning. And then we can share that with our team so they have consistent answers, where it impacts them. Like, what does this mean to me and my role and these clients I'm working on? But also, they can handle objections or questions that we could potentially get from clients. So it really creates that consistency. We're all on the same page, that rowing, we're moving in the same direction and we have clarity of answers. And then there's a question that comes up or an objection that comes up. We have a place to say, hey, Mary owns the FAQ, send anything else to her that we didn't address, and then we'll compile it and we'll send it back out, and we'll create this, constant stream of communication to clarify things, as we're moving forward. So, and then that's, our communication plan will then say who needs to know what when. So in my succession plan example, the partners, will get, a 2-year notice from the retiring partner. And then we need to, figure out, what is going to be required. Hopefully we're doing some planning and, documenting a transition plan to share with the team before we go communicate with them. And then we'll tell the managers and those that are most impacted, maybe personally, we'll tell the managers one-on-one that person is working directly with. And then we'll have a broader, communication to the managers in our manager meeting. And then we can tell the staff. And then we got to, right behind that, be telling the clients. We need to have our strategy plan for our clients, because as soon as we tell, the staff, it's going to get out and they're going to have questions about the clients. And so we need to think through that cascade. Who needs to know what message, who's delivering it, and when, what's the timeline for doing that? And, keeping our, positioning, that relative advantage top of mind throughout all our communications. So again, this sounds like a lot, sounds hard. Communication is not easy. I think in every single firm that we work with, it's one of the things we can do better at. Often it's, one of the top one or two requests in any kind of employee surveys is better, more transparent communication. And it's challenging because we all have different communication preferences. But the more planning and the more thoughtful we are on these different considerations, the more effective we're going to be in, anticipating it and, again, bringing people along. So we want to take the time and discuss the answers, the what, who, why, when, how of the change, the what's going to be better, how's your life going to be better, what's going to be different. And what's going to stay the same, because we still have some same commitments. My succession planning example, we still have a commitment, to client satisfaction, and we are approaching the clients, and so we want to make sure we facilitate that. And then from that information that we're gathering, we can capture it in that change communication plan, and then assess progress along the way. And that's one of the things we need to communicate. Like, when are we going to get updates? How are we going to update how we're doing against that change? And maybe we're going to implement a new, platform, this fall, and then we'll assess how we're doing it in our pilot in February, and then we'll create a rollout plan for the next group of clients or the next department or whatever it might be. And so, how are we going to assess progress? And again, be honest. We have to be straight. Here's what worked well. Here's maybe what we didn't anticipate and how we're addressing it. And here's some questions there on the parking lot. We'll figure out where they fit. We want to be straight about it in our assessment of the process. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't minimize it. Hear the feedback, and then what our plan is going forward. I think that's really important, and sometimes a big piece that we forget to communicate. And when I pull all of this together and I get it into a change communication, it does minimize that chaos, and it does create more confidence in our ability to change. And we have more clarity, and we know who to go to for what. And we know we're going to assess, and we're going to make changes along the way. So if something comes up or it didn't work how we thought, we know we can pivot. And so that's, the idea of identifying changes in strategy that we might need to make. And that's okay. And then we want to make sure we acknowledge those who have made the transition, show those examples, celebrate successes. We probably could do more of that as well. Show the case studies, show the results that they gained because of implementing this change. And then we're going to encourage those who are lagging and bring them along. And we're going to show them how they're going to benefit and what's going to happen if they get left behind. At some point, we do all need to get into the boat. We need to have the right seat on the boat, but we can help bring them along and, identify their objections, handle them, and then show them, hey, this is how it's going to be. And so some of those early adopters could be those people that bring those who are lagging along. That might be a way to, supplement that. So when we talk about our communications plan, I said, we need to talk about what the change is coming, what's needed, or expected. And then the big thing is why, what's motivating this change and what benefits will it produce, so that we can really identify what's going to be better and what those results are. And then we have to be straight about who's affected in what ways. Here's kind of the ripple effects, and here's the different implications. And then we have requests of people. So it's one of the things to consider and include in your change communications is you have a call to action. What action does the change require? We're going to now, have our clients go through these client service coordinators for the setup and onboarding. And they're going to be the ones that are going to gather the materials, and they're going to be the ones that prep the client, and they're going to do the scheduling, and they'll communicate that, with the partner and engagement manager and staff. And so here's what you need to do is, turn that over to them. They're going to, do all of the setup. And so they'll keep you in the loop, but you're not going to jump in there and be responding to these requests. You're going to let, Sarah respond to those requests. So what are my behaviors or actions or changes that I might need? Another one might be in that scenario, we have a new workflow and new role and client service coordinator. Maybe one of our requests is, here's how you need to set that up with your client when you are, meeting with them and setting them up for the next engagement. And here's what you need to say verbally, the expectations and the changes in our workflow. And then we have this document that we've prepared for you to send to them after the meeting, and introduce Sarah And then we were going to hand that off to Sarah, and then Sarah is going to be the one that follows up. So what is my call to action? What new behaviors, what actions? There might be some mindset shifts, that we want to approach, and what steps can they take so that they are very specific. We know very specific. And then I alluded to this. Hey, we have a communication. If we can template things for people, make it easy. Make it see, spot, run. I think that is important for us to consider. And then, I talked about what's not expected to change, and how are we going to communicate status, or how are we going to assess how is this going? And so we can communicate that as well as part of it. And we have to keep this present. We might be going down this path and it's like, why are we doing this again? Oh yeah, we got to go back to what's going to be better, what result we're looking for, what kind of time saving, what kind of enhanced client experience. How are we going to elevate, partners and managers so they can be more proactive with clients and, have the time and the capacity and the brain space to go meet with them, because they have lots of things we could help them solve. We're in the problem solving business and problems are up. So how do we have more of those touch points and be their really trusted advisors and have the capacity to be able to do that? And by the way, we will grow. We will expand the services that we're able to offer our clients. That creates more stickiness and client retention. So like spelling out those benefits, don't assume that they're going to make those connections. We have to spell it out, and we probably have to remind people a few times, and maybe even ourselves as we're in the midst of change. Why are we doing this again? And so that we can, see the benefits and be able to articulate those benefits. And so benefits really answer the question, what's in it for me? So I talked, about, why is it going to be different? How is it going to benefit them? And I just want to break this apart when we talk about defining what's going to be different. Mostly we speak in features or facts about our thing. So we're going to have this new workflow, and we're going to use this new technology, and we have these new systems and setup, and here's the client files, and here's who's going to be involved, like all the facts and features about it. But we often stop short to the benefits, which answers the question, what's in it for me or with them? Or so what? So what that we're going to do that? And that's where we're going to make sure to get to the real benefit, which shows up usually in 4 areas. We all have selfish interest. And mostly we avoid talking about it because we're taught not to be selfish. But our selfish interest shows up in the form of time. I want more time, or I want to spend less time on something, or money. I want more money, or I want to save money, or I want to look good or avoid looking bad. That's like a human condition that we have. Or I want some kind of peace of mind, or lack of worry or concern. And so how is that going to show up for you? You're going to have more time because Sarah's over here, managing the process for you to, focus on the client relationship aspect, of your role. We are going to make more money because we have more leverage, and because we're automating, and because we are using non-CPAs, and because we are using other resources, our revenue will be up. By the way, the selfish interest is why clients choose you, or can choose to stay with you, or choose new services from you, because you're appealing to their selfish interest. So the more we can identify it and articulate it, don't make them do the connection from the features and facts, the more effective we are going to be, and the better able we're going to be able to bring them along on that change adoption curve. So I just included a couple examples here for you. And I have some other articles and tools, on the benefit statement and on the change communication. There's a whole bunch listed in the platform here, but if you want them, there'll be a QR code at the end. I can send you a full tool set with some other articles and tools that you might be able to leverage, because this is one of them. And I gave the example about, with all the news about organizations making people come back to the office, we want to reiterate our commitment to flexible hybrid work opportunities. So that's the fact statement, the feature statement. And the benefit is you'll have control of when and where you work, so you can balance both work and life commitments. So you'll have the flexibility, to choose when and where to work. or my retirement example was John's retirement effective 12/31/26. We want you to share the opportunity for you to elevate in your role and transition ownership of client relationships that make sense and that you love working with, while evaluating your current client load and prioritizing those that may need to transition away from you. So we're going to, create opportunities for you with his clients and look together with you. That's the benefit. Because people hear John's retiring, that feels like more work over here. Senior manager, new partner, right? And so how can we articulate what the benefit is and then what our next step is? So look at that. Look at where you could weave in benefit statements into our change communications, into your proposals, into your communications with your clients to bring them along so that they can see the benefit. Now, I said communication is not easy, but when done well is effective and saves us on the back end from all of the negative communication. So my bad news is people need to hear things 7 times to truly absorb them and then repeat them back accurately. And they can only catch it every other time. So it's really 14. So when we said it in a meeting, that's only one and only one form. We need to use different mediums. So I need to verbally put it in writing. The FAQ is a form, an email, a presentation like this could be one, meeting with a client could be another. So use different mediums, communicate 7 times, and be generous about our communication. Usually we say, we already communicated that, and then we're done. And that's not very effective. So we want to aim for no surprises. We want to tell the truth, be really straight about the good and the bad and the change. Maybe there's some things that we have to give up and the benefit's going to be over here on the other side. We want to develop trust in the change leaders. And that does come with telling the truth and communicating, providing status, and then also refraining from triangulation. No complaining about our changes to our triangulation buddies and, saying, well, gosh, I hope that goes well for them, but I don't think it's going to work for me. Or telling my staff, hey, we're not going to do that. We'll let them go do that over there. Or, nodding, looking like we're in agreement in a meeting, but then I leave. And as I'm walking down the hallway, I'm like, it's never going to work. So we really have to stomp out triangulation in our practices. And then we want to make sure we're talking about who's leading what aspect. Who do I go to with my frequently asked questions? Who do I go to with questions about my processes? And then I can be really clear about who to go to with questions or concerns or ideas or new possibilities, or maybe I want to get involved. So we want to be really clear about who's doing what and who do I go to for what kind of information. So I'm going to leave you with this quote, and then we're going to open up Q&A. So I'm going to turn the sharing off, and then I'll come and answer Q&A for our last few minutes. But I'm going to leave you with this quote, and I have one more poll. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. And that's our job as change leaders. And hopefully, following these processes and this change communication approach will bring more clarity, will pull down all of the overwhelm and buzz and confusion so it can be smoother, so we can have a more methodical approach to change. And that will create the calm. So one thing are you going to commit to try first out of today's webinar? You're going to create a communication strategy, share your vision for change, take into account the change profile of your audience. Where are they on that change adoption curve? Involve laggards and late adopters. Maybe we've been avoiding them. I need their input. I need their objections. Create a position statement that accomplishes those 5 factors from Roger's 5 factors, or the benefits. They get really good at practicing benefit statements with them. What's in it for me, or communicate times. Now, if it's not complete, I don't think all these options show on the poll because it was limited. You can write it into the Q&A if you're picking one that's not on here, okay? And my contact information is here. And here is the QR code. I have some other tools I can send you. There are a whole bunch, though, on the resource side. So please, download those. But you can use the QR code and we can send you some other tools and articles that might support you in this change management. And my contact information is here. So you are welcome to, contact me at any time. I'm going to stop sharing. If you missed this QR code, it is in the PowerPoint and the PDF and the resources, so you're able to get it there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'm going to look and see where are we at with any kinds of questions. So let's look here. Thank you for the questions and the comments about the quotes. Yes, great. Yes, pivot for sure. Let's pivot. Great. All right. If you have any specific scenarios, let me know. I love that you guys are saying hello to everybody. And maybe, what your top takeaways are for you. I'm going to go here and look at the polls. So great. Thank you guys for jumping in on that. Yeah, creative communication strategy, number one for sure. It will, mind blowing. It will just dramatically shift the success that you have in your change if we get more proactive and we are able to communicate more, more straight, more clarity, and appeal to people's selfish interest and appeal and address their questions that they have or their objections they have. So I love that, and I see that several of you picked other options as well, so that's really great. Very good. Okay, I'm going out to the chat to see if there was anything else. Q&A. Yeah, have you ever noticed that we're our own worst enemy? We think clients will react poorly to change, but realistically, 90% of them are perfectly fine of it. 100%. So I don't know if that's a rhetorical question, but yes. And that's one of the things that we encourage leaders that we work with is when's the last time we've asked them? And they're ready to change. And by the way, their team is changing and their leadership is changing. So I think that's important, for us to distinguish, and usually they are fine with it. And, they might have some questions about it, but they're willing to try it, so we can facilitate that. Yeah. So the slides are available. That's one of the questions. I'm not sure what the question is about resistance from contractors or employees. So if you have something more specific on that, maybe you can share that. Yeah, I'm always worried. I change too often because there is always the next best thing. And I think that's something for us to acknowledge. And I'm just going to use the example of AI apps and tools. There is probably going to be a next best thing. And so we need to take what there is available now, apply it, and then know we might need to pivot and change to something else. And I know we don't want to do that all the time, but because of how fast things are evolving, that might happen. And so we have to prioritize it. I think that's what, advice or coaching I would, give you is how do we just prioritize the next best thing and the change? And are we doing it just because, FOMO, fear of missing out? Or are we doing it because there's a true benefit and life will be better, our work will be better, our client experience will be better? So if we can get to the why, I think that can help you discern which of those changes we should make and which ones it's yeah, that would be, fine, but it's really not going to be that much better than what we're going to do. That would be my first gauge, I guess, if you will, to identify that. So how do you deal with employees that struggle with control? I don't think it's just employees that struggle with control. How do anybody that, I want control and I don't want to let go often is what the flip side of that is. And, I think if we can show them the benefit and gain their trust on what the outcome is going to be, and communication is the number one thing that we can do to help build that trust and build that confidence. And if we're transparent about it, then we can, have them start to see, hey, I'm in the loop. I have an input. I'm able to, ask questions. when they can feel like they can do that, they have less worry about that control or losing control, if you will. So I think that's important. Okay, great. I'm glad I answered that question about resistance. Awesome. These are great questions. If there's anything else, we got about 1 minute left. I'm happy to answer it. Or my contact information is in the back of the PDF of the PowerPoint on the resources. So you're welcome to scan that, but also communicate, with me directly, connect with me in social. I just would love to hear your feedback. This was awesome. Thank you guys for being so interactive. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and pick 1 or 2 things you're going to go implement. You're going to come with a whole bunch of ideas, whole bunch of things you could change out of this. And so your job is going to be to discern down, hey, here's my list of possibilities. And here's the 1 or 2 things I'm going to start with first, and then communicate that. And good luck to you managing change. I know it will bring calm when you get this clarity and you start to communicate it. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your conference.